Hello guys and welcome back to Sonic Origins. In the last episode, if you don't remember, we went ahead and we started up Sonic 3 and Knuckles. We got most of the Chaos Emeralds, although I forgot some of them. And in this episode, we're going to go ahead and hopefully unlock Super Sonic and progress further in the game. Now, the last giant ring should be somewhere around here. Where is it? There you are. Okay, so this is the last one. So at the end of the last episode, I sort of talked about how in video essays, I wish that I could see more video essays about people just like gushing about things that they really love. And I kind of found that in this channel called Internet Pit Stop. I watched their video on Twilight Princess, and it was immediately like so many things that I wanted to see in a video essay. Just like all there, just like gushing passionately about a thing that you love. And I watched a few of their other videos as well. They're really good, so I'd highly suggest you check them out. And then another sort of video essayist that I've been watching a lot is Alex Lennon, who creates videos about comics. I think he's really cool. When he does talk about things that he dislikes, very negative, he doesn't get all like loud and yelly and screamy. He keeps the same sort of tone of voice, and whenever he like gets quote-unquote upset, it's so much more like lighthearted and comedic. Whereas with some people, like when they like get upset for like the sake of comedy, quote-unquote, it's usually just them being loud and screamy and stuff like that, which I'm not too big a fan of. But I can always tell that whenever he gets like upset at stuff, it's very lighthearted, very just laid back and relaxed. I really like his stuff. And then I also recently discovered some videos by a YouTuber who I believe their channel is pronounced Tesnakerer, something like that. But they basically made a couple of videos about Sonic games and like playing them incorrectly, quote unquote. And it's really cool because like you go in with this wacky premise of like, oh, what if I played Sonic 2 backwards? And then like it gets weirdly philosophical halfway through, and it's just so well put together. I'd highly suggest it. Speaking of talking about things we like, we have just unlocked Super Sonic since we got all of the Chaos Emeralds, so let's go ahead and briefly get into that. It works just as he did in Sonic 2. You get 50 rings, jump up in the air, press a button, and then, you pretty much breeze through the level. I hope I didn't come off as if I was anti-media analysis or anything like that at the end of the last video. Because, again, media analysis is a very important thing. I was just talking about my personal taste when it comes to video essays, not like, I wasn't condemning the idea of talking negatively about something as a whole. As I mentioned previously, some of my favorite video essayists do talk about things negatively. But yeah, it's just that I would personally love to see a bit more positivity and stuff like that. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right places, but yeah. One thing that this whole thing sort of reminds me of is a very interesting idea that I want to talk about more in other LPs, is the whole idea of, logic and emotion, and how some people think that, logic reigns supreme and is the only way to look at something. But in reality, at least from my point of view, emotion is like equally important to logic. You gotta strike a balance between looking at something logically and just fitting in your own or other people's emotions in there. And I just think that's a very important thing. And like I said, I'll get to it in other LPs, because some of the upcoming video games that I want to play through sort of deal with those topics, like Virtue's Last Reward, which is a sequel to my favorite game of all time. In that game, I'm gonna try to be very brief about this because those games are like very complicated, and so, but the basic theme is, in that game you can choose to either ally with someone and risk being betrayed, but you could put your trust in someone and gain points, and the whole point of the game is that you have to gain a certain number of points in order to win. Or you can betray someone at the possibility of gaining even more points, but also you have the possibility of, gaining nothing at all. And some people who like try to look at it like very like surface levelly are just like, well, obviously I'm gonna choose betray because, I either gain points or I don't gain any points, but if I choose to ally, then I have a chance of losing points. But the whole, like, big point of the game is that, or at least from my perspective, is that you're supposed to gain the trust of the people around you and prove that you can be trusted. And so choosing ally each time seems like a better option, because even if, you know, you get betrayed occasionally, a lot of people are going to see, like, a lot of the characters will see, like, hey, he's constantly, you know, choosing ally. I can trust him and put my faith in him as well. Again, there's, like, a bit more depth to it, and I'm trying to be very brief because I don't want to explain, like, this entire other game while I'm Let's Playing Sonic. But yeah, then this is going to be the last time I bring up this game series in this Let's Play, because I keep bringing it up for some reason. For some reason, every time I think about, like, cool things to talk about, it always comes back to this game. But in Danganronpa, one of the characters' like entire arcs is being like, is realizing, yo, if I just try to look at things logically and throw out all emotion, I won't be able to, you know, solve any of these cases and stuff like that, because that game's a murder mystery game. But if I take into account emotion and mix that together with logic, I can actually, you know, discover new things that I had never thought of before. You know, because people are very complex. They do things for different reasons. And, you know, everyone has their own thought process. I know that's like a very, like, no-duh kind of statement. But, you know, everyone's different. Everyone, you know, everyone's brains work in different ways. And so if you just try to look at it in a very, like, strict, like, logic-only way, you kind of lose something there. Sorry that I keep bringing up that series. I love that series to death. But, you know, if I keep bringing up the same thing over and over and over and over again, it's gonna get kind of annoying if you're listening to me commentate. So, last time, I promise. I'll save all of my thoughts about those games when I get around to Let's Playing them. That's something that I did a lot as a kid, too, is that I would constantly, you know, when talking with friends, bring up the same games and stuff like that, and bring up the same thoughts and stuff like that, because I'd get really excited about, like, a new game that I really like. So I'd talk with friends about it a lot and bring it up a lot. And, like, in some cases I still do it today, like I'm doing right now, like I just did. But yeah, I was kind of a weird kid when I was younger. Nearly every day I look back at, like, or I, like, think about something I did when I was a kid, and I'm just like, you dweeb, stop being so weird. But I guess it's like they say, if you're looking back at your past self and cringing a lot, that means you're growing, or however the saying goes. It's a saying I've heard a lot, I just don't remember the exact phrasing, but you get what I'm trying to say. Anyways, I guess I could go ahead and commentate on this level. It's pretty cool. It's nothing like too big or special, but, you know, you can really tell that they knew that you would have Supersonic by this point, because they put a lot of rings throughout this entire level. So they're just like, okay, here's a bunch of rings, just have fun with Supersonic, just mess around, get used to his controls, stuff like that. And I just think that's really, really cool. This level sort of has an Ancient Ruins kind of vibe to it, which is something that's, you know, always been in Sonic. I think this is kind of where it starts. You know what? No, because I guess there was Marble Zone in the first game. But this game is the introduction of Knuckles, and in my mind, I always associate him with ruins and stuff like that. You know, in Sonic Adventure, in order to get to Angel Island, you have to go through the Mystic Ruins, or near the Mystic Ruins. You know, obviously, again, this game has that sort of ruins kind of vibe. I'm struggling to come up with words here, but you get the point that I'm trying to go at. And then, of course, Sonic Adventure 2, there are some... there's that pyramid that we go to, and pyramids are kind of like ruins if you really think about it. I mean, if it's in at least a little bit of disarray, I'm sure you could technically classify them as ruins. I forget if I've mentioned this up to this point, but out of the original trilogy, and out of this collection, Sonic 3 and Knuckles is definitely my favorite. I might have mentioned that in the previous episode, but I don't know, that was so long ago, so I've kind of forgotten what I've talked about up to this point. But yeah, and it's not like this is some sort of hot take. It's a very commonly shared opinion that Sonic 3 and Knuckles is like one of the best out of the 2D games. I don't know if I'd put Mania above this game, because Mania has so much cool stuff, and I do want to get around to playing that game on the channel eventually. don't know if I'd put this game higher or Sonic Mania higher. In my mind, they're both like equally sort of like great. They're both like really important like entries in the franchise, and both games that I revisit fairly often when I'm like, oh, I want to play a classic 2D Sonic game, and it's always like either Sonic 3 and Knuckles or Sonic Mania, and like sometimes Sonic 2. Let me know what you guys think is the best 2D Sonic game in the comments. And as always, be sure to be respectful and stuff like that. But that's kind of a given though, isn't it? Anyways, Carnival Night Zone. At least I think that's what this zone is called. I don't know, I forgot to actually look at the transition screen. This zone and the zones after it are very interesting because in Sonic 3, the first half of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, from this zone onwards, all of the songs had to be replaced in Origins for copyright reasons. Now, the specific reasons behind this is that this is going off a very hazy memory, but the music for this zone and the next two zones were made by like a composer who makes music for Michael Jackson, and so technically like Michael Jackson's people own the rights to this like half of the music in Sonic 3, and so for copyright reasons the music had to be replaced in Sonic Origins, and the music is just so much worse in the Origins versions. I'll be sure to leave a link in the description to the original versions, because they're just so much better, and I would prefer that you go ahead and have a listen to those, because they are so awesome. Speaking of music, I was going back and listening to some songs for through the Sonic CD soundtrack, because, you know, for my Sonic CD videos, I was linking in the description, you know, the US counterparts for the different themes. And I forgot how creepy Robotnik's theme is in the US version of Sonic CD, because the Japanese version, it's a bit more like what you'd expect in a video game. Also, by the way, if you grab the giant rings after you've already collected all 7 Chaos Emeralds, it gives you 50 normal rings. But yeah, the Japanese version of the song is like what you'd expect for a boss theme, kinda. But the US version sounds like it'd be in like a creepypasta or something like that. It is just like very haunting. And in the Japanese version of the song, you know, Robotnik laughs in the background, and you don't think much of it in the Japanese version. But in the US version, they make it super, super creepy. Again, I highly recommend checking out the US version of the Sonic CD soundtrack. Although I prefer the Japanese version, the US version is still good. I've always been a huge wimp when it comes to horror-related stuff. Even now, whenever I see something scary, 99% of the time I have to look away from the screen or take huge breaks in the middle of it. I'll like pause and come back to it later and like watch something else that's not scary. I don't know, I'm just a huge wimp when it comes to horror. And I've always been this way, even with like stuff that's not particularly scary. For example, when I was a kid, I could not finish Luigi's Mansion just because I was super scared. Like, I had seen, if you'll remember from like the E3 demo of that game or something like that, or not E3 demo, but like the trailer, I think, there was that really creepy Luigi face, and that like haunted me as a kid to the point where I was so scared of you know, like somehow seeing that in game, like I was in a creepypasta or something like that, that I just could not finish the game. Anyways, I realized that I was you know, recently I've kind of been talking negatively about Sonic Origins, so let's get some positives in here. One of the things that I love about Sonic Origins is the fact that when you boot up the game and you go to select a game from the collection, you get this world map of Sonic's world with the islands from the various games. And, you know, you click on stuff in the world map to, you know, enter that game. I just think that's so so cool. There's even different variations of the Sonic 3 and Knuckles one, depending on, you know, the stuff from, whether you want to see the stuff from Sonic 3 or from Sonic and Knuckles, or a different variation of the one from Sonic 3. It's so, so cool. And for the bonus stuff, you even get references to Sonic the Hedgehog Spinball and Sonic 3D Flicky's Island or Sonic 3D Blast. I absolutely love that world map. One of my favorite things about this collection. It's so cool to see. One thing that I only learned recently about Mecha Sonic, the guy that we fought at the end of Sonic 2, is that he only has one eye, or at least like only one pupil. And it's very weird looking once you see that. For example, if you go ahead and look at the thumbnail for my video on Mecha Sonic, or not on Mecha Sonic, but the thumbnail with Mecha Sonic in it, you'll see that he just has one eye instead of having two eyes, which I think is very weird looking. I mean, I guess it has a bit of a charm to it, but I'd much prefer if he had two eyes. Speaking of Mecha Sonic, at this point in time, like right before Sonic 3 came out, there were 3 separate metal versions of Sonic. There was Mecha Sonic in Sonic 2, there was Metal Sonic in Sonic CD, and there was Silver Sonic in the 8-bit version of Sonic 2, which is completely different from Mecha Sonic from the actual Sonic 2. There's a video that I saw about it recently. I'll go ahead and link it in the description, but it goes into pretty good detail about, you know, how that happened. I all around thought it was like a really, really good video, so I highly suggest you check it out. Speaking of CD and Sonic 2, I realized that I never gave my opinions on those games, like in one general statement, like I did for Sonic 1, because for Sonic 1, during the end credits of that game, I talked about, you know, what my thoughts on the game were, like all of the things that it did that I thought were really cool. And I realized that I never did it for Sonic CD and 2, but that's mostly because I had already pretty much gotten my thoughts out about those games while I was in the middle of playing them. Crap, I hate this part so much because, you know, you just go along normally and then you get crushed by that barrel, and it sucks. Anyways, I'll try to sum up my thoughts on those games really quickly. Sonic CD is fairly cool. It has a lot of really cool ideas, but I'm not particularly a fan of how they were executed. Again, I love time travel and stuff like that, but the way it's executed in Sonic CD, I just don't really like all that much. I don't like the special stages for Sonic CD, I don't like the level design. One thing I will say about the game, though, is that it introduced Metal Sonic, and Metal Sonic is so cool, so, you know, props to the game for that. But yeah, all around, I almost got crushed again. All around, it's like a pretty solid game. I wouldn't rank it any lower than like a 6 or 7 out of 10. Sonic 2, on the other hand, I can gush much more about. I think that if we ignore Metropolis Zone, that game is like pretty much like perfect. There isn't a stage that I particularly dislike in Sonic 2, ignoring Metropolis Zone again. I thought that the level design was pretty fair, and there were so many cool things that were executed in that game. All around, although I don't think it's my favorite game out of the collection, I think Sonic 3 and Knuckles has that beat. I still have so much love and respect for Sonic 2. And then, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, I'll go ahead and say my thoughts on it right now. I think that this game is so much fun. I originally disliked Sonic 3 and Knuckles when I was a kid, just because, you know, I would continuously die on stages and stuff like that, and, you know, I thought that the level design was super annoying. But now that I don't have to worry about lives and stuff like that, and it's pretty easy to get Supersonic, I don't really have to worry about any of the things that I disliked about the game. The only problem that I really have with the game is, as you've seen before, sometimes it can be really mean with crushing you with stuff, and so that can be super obnoxious. But other than that, this game is so dang cool. Ice Cap Zone is such a cool zone, and in the original Sonic 3, it had such good music. I don't even know if that's grammatically correct. The music was so good, I'll just say. It's a remix of a song called Hard Times by the Jetsons, which is a really good song. Go ahead and listen to it if you haven't already. It's so good. But in this game, or in Sonic Origins, they replaced it with like the beta versions of the theme songs, which are just not as fun. I just don't like them as much. The way that the original song started off, and once you got to like pretty much the chorus of the song, I know that's probably not the proper terminology, but like the da da da, like that stuff, it's such a good song. And I don't know, the theme song for Ice Cap Zone in this version of the game is just, I don't know, it's kind of grating and annoying for me. Also, the way that Ice Cap is spelled is it's also one word, similar to Hydro City. So do you think that the people who pronounce it as Hydrocity pronounce Ice Cap as Ikacap? Because if they do, then that's weird and dumb, and if not, then that's like, I don't know, if hypocritical sounds like too dramatic. I haven't really talked about, one thing that I want to talk about that I haven't really yet is the endings for each of the Sonic games. Sonic games have always had multiple endings. They stopped doing this, kinda, in, you know, the 3D games, but for the 2D games, you know, depending on whether or not you get the Chaos Emeralds or whatever the equivalent to that is in whatever game you're playing, you know, you'll either get the good ending or the bad ending. And I want to talk about those real quick. So, the good ending for Sonic 1 is very similar to the bad ending for Sonic 1. In the bad ending, Sonic runs through Green Hill Zone and then jumps out of the camera. In the good ending, he runs through Green Hill Zone, and then the Chaos Emeralds make a bunch of flowers appear, and then he jumps at the camera. It's very similar, so, you know, you're not missing much if you get the bad ending. In Sonic CD, the bad ending shows that Little Planet, you know, is teleported through, I guess, space and time, right back to where it was. So it gets chained up again, which sucks. I don't think that's the canon ending. The good ending, you know, it shows, I think it also shows like flowers blooming and stuff like that, and it shows, you know, you did a good job. So congrats to you for doing that. Sonic 2's is very interesting because it's mostly the same, but with one key difference. If you get all of the Chaos Emeralds, then, you know, when Sonic falls out of the Death Egg, he, you know, uses the Chaos Emeralds to transform into Super Sonic, and, you know, he saves himself. It's different, though, in the bad ending, because, you know, you don't have all the Chaos Emeralds. Instead, Tails saves you by letting you land on the tornado. And a lot of people have mentioned how they like the bad ending a bit more than the good ending, because, you know, you have this cool moment of, you know, Tails saving Sonic, which, you know, Tails throughout the entire game is kind of like a sort of bumbling sidekick, so to see him actually, you know, finally, you know, do something really cool and save Sonic, it's nice. The one where you get all of the Chaos Emeralds is definitely the canon one, though, because as we see in the opening for Sonic 3 and Knuckles, Sonic, you know, has all of the Chaos Emeralds on him and transforms into Super Sonic. But yeah, the bad ending is kinda heartwarming. Speaking of bad endings, in the 8-bit version of Sonic 2, I might have mentioned this before, but, you know, Tails gets kidnapped by Dr. Eggman, and the whole point of the game is you're trying to go ahead and save him. And if you don't get all 6 Chaos Emeralds, Tails just dies. And then the game ends. Gosh, we're already done with Ice Cap Zone. That was such a fun stage. Welcome to Launch Base Zone. This is a very interesting one, because as you'll see in the background, that huge, like, metallic, you know, sphere is the Death Egg. It crash landed here on Angel Island after the events of Sonic 2, And since then, Eggman has been rebuilding and trying to get it to work again. And Launch Base Zone is, a very clear visual of that. We see, all of the parts going into it. We see him trying to piece it back together. One thing that a lot of people talk about with Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and that, the game deserves props for, is its visual storytelling. Because, you learn so much about these characters and this world without ever having to hear a single line of dialogue. And that's really, really cool. I love stuff like this. So just like the previous two zones, this zone's theme has been swapped out, rather. And I haven't listened to the original version of Launch Base Zone in a long time, so I don't know what my opinion on it is, but I'm pretty sure the original was better. I'll get back to you on that, though. Another interesting thing that I want to bring up is that Launch Base Zone was the final zone in the original version of Sonic 3. So we're still kind of continuing the trend that I set up in the original, that I set up in all of the previous videos, where it takes us 2 episodes to get through a Sonic game. That's one of the things that I like about Sonic games, is that they're very short, very compact, and that makes them really fun to replay over and over and over again. I have issues with my attention span, where it's very short, and even when I'm, really enjoying a game, I usually can't play a game for longer than, an hour at the most, because my brain just completely shuts off and, gets kind of bored. And that kind of sucks. I wish that my brain's attention span was so much longer. But yeah, Sonic games are great because for most of them, you can speedrun through them. If you know the game well, you can speedrun through the entire game in a day. And maybe even if you don't know the game that well, you could still, get through it throughout an entire day. Crap, I'm forgetting where to go. Launch Base has always been, a bit of a confusing level for me, and I get it. It was the ending of the original game. But yeah, it is very much like a labyrinth. So, to dive in... So one thing that I'd like to talk about that I think... crap. One thing that I think kind of ruins a series for some people is when it's a bit longer than an average series, whether it be, a video game series, or a television series, or a movie series, or something like that, is people being like, oh, it's so long, it's gonna take so long to get through it. And I think that that's only really a complaint, because the way that a lot of people, at least from what I've seen, view a series is that it's something that you need to finish, and you're only a real fan once you've finished it, and the only point in a series is for it to be finished. And yeah, obviously, stories need to end and stuff like that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, a lot of people, tend to dismiss things because it'll take a long time to finish. But if it's enjoyable, then who cares? Let's say a TV show is 200 episodes long. That's a long thing. But if all of those 200 episodes are really good and really fun, does that really matter? I feel like people will be able to enjoy things once they stop viewing it as a checklist. Each series is something that you need to get to the end of completely in order to, be a real fan of it and stuff like that. Because, oh, hey, Knuckles. Because, what's really the problem with something being really long? Like a series or something like that. Maybe there's some other reason that I'm completely missing that, that irritates people. But I don't know. If you're listening to this, the one thing that I want you to take away from this video is that, you know that saying that, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey? That's really good advice for enjoying a series. It's not about finishing something, and saying that you finished it so you can brag about finishing it to other people. It's about enjoying yourself and having a fun experience. Alright, so this is gonna be the last act of this episode. I remember this being a bit of a long one, so strap in. One weird thing that I keep doing is I keep making up arbitrary rules for my LPs and stuff like that. Like, for example, you know, whenever I play through a series, I always want to play through, I want to play through the entire series, so that people who are, you know, getting introduced to the series through me, you know, they can experience the entire thing without having to look at other YouTube channels and, you know, scour around the internet to find, you know, different Let's Plays and stuff like that. I say that as if it's like a difficult task to look up a Let's Play. But anyways, one like challenge that I've been imposing on myself, that's like not necessary, is for some game franchises, I want to play through the spin-offs. For example, Ace Attorney. I want to not only play through the 6 mainline games, but also play through the Investigations duology and the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. And so I'm like, okay, if I want to play through the entire series, I'm going to play all of these different games. And then I'll get to a different series, and I'll be like, oh, I don't really know if I want to play the spin-offs for this series. And for some reason, my brain keeps tricking me into thinking like, no, you've got to do it. You've got to play through the spin-offs. You need to show the entire series. And I'm like, who's making me do this except for my own dumb brain? So that's another thing I need to work on, is not like forcing myself to do things that I don't want to do. Another example of this, of dumb rules that I've been trying to like arbitrarily put on myself. I have this like idea in my head that I have to, that I don't know how to describe this. Oh, here's the boss, by the way. That every single year I have to finish the sequels to previous games I'd played on the channel. I don't know if that sentence makes sense, but basically, to further describe this, my thought process is like, okay, so last year I played through this game and this game and this game and this game and this game. So this year, I need to make sure I play the sequels to all of those games. And I'm like, why? If I don't want to play the sequels to those games, I'll just not play it. I don't know why my brain does this so often. This part is actually really cool in the game, where Sonic gets to ride around in the Eggmobile, or the Egg-O-Matic, or whatever it's called. It's so cool. And it's a very fun idea of how the beginning of the first game in the trilogy had Sonic fighting against Eggman in the Eggmobile, and then the ending of the third game in the trilogy ends with Sonic in the Eggmobile. That's very, very fun. Alright, this part is gonna be tough, because I'm gonna have to do this fight with 0 rings. And I don't know if I could do that. I'm gonna focus real hard right now. Yes! Okay. So that is the ending of Sonic 3. or at least the first half of Sonic 3 and Knuckles. I'll go ahead and leave a link in the description to how the original version of Sonic 3 ended. But yeah, that's going to be the end of this video. With having beaten that boss, we have knocked the Death Egg right out of the sky yet again. That cutscene was the title screen for the Sonic and Knuckles half of the game. But yeah, having beaten the Sonic 3 half of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, we're going to leave off the video here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and in the next episode, we're going to go ahead and get started on the second half of the game and get ever closer to the ending of Sonic Origins. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye!